Welcome back to another edition of the Night Report podcast. I'm your host, Mike Broadbent. Joining me is a very special guest. He is the lead NFL draft analyst for PFF. He is the co-host of the NFL Stock Exchange, Trevor Sikkema. Thanks for joining us, man.
Mike, good to be with you, man. Excited to talk a little Rutgers football here with you.
Yeah, I wanted to get you on because you guys did about a 15-minute segment on Athan Kaliakmanis a few weeks ago on your show, and I thought no better person, a fellow Believe Network host, to talk about some Scarlet Knights. We're getting into Athan, we're getting into some of his pass catchers, and some other players on the Scarlet Knights. But before we do any of that, this podcast is presented to you once again by FanDuel. One bet and perfect guess for this, the first overall pick odds just came out a few weeks ago. One sneaky guy I think has got a really good shot at it. Reuben Bain Jr. was 15-1 on this. I don't know if there's a quarterback that has really risen above the top. I think this potentially could be another Myles Garrett year. We have a bunch of quarterbacks who could go number one, but he's clearly the best talent of the group. What do you think about Reuben Bain number one overall odds?
He is certainly making his case to be one of, if not the top player that we have in this draft class. I think right now a lot of people would tell you it's either him or Caleb Downs, the safety from Ohio State, and Caleb is a fantastic player, but is a safety going to go number one overall? Probably not. But can a pass rusher grow number one overall? Yeah, we see that happen all the time whenever it's not a quarterback. And so Reuben Bain is having a heck of a start to the year, and he's making a statement for that number one pick. I agree with you.
All right, so if you got FanDuel, hop on that and get on that bet while you still have the opportunity. But let's talk some Scarlet Knights. Athan Kaliakmanis has been a quarterback who has risen, maybe has been one of the highest risers this year in terms of jumping from last year this next. What are some of the things as a neutral advisor and someone who specializes in NFL draft, everything NFL draft? What have been some of the things that Athan Kaliakmanis has done this year that have really kind of perked your ears up?
Yeah, I think that it's really two factors that have been so impressive with him, and the reason why we talked about him on the Stock Exchange show, and that is he's been a much better decision maker than what he had been in the past, especially the year prior in 2024. And then also just the overall accuracy numbers have been there for him. And I'll be honest, he was not on my draft radar at all whatsoever coming into summer and then coming into this season. He starts playing really, really well. I see that his grades are pretty good. Connor, my co-host at the NFL Stock Exchange, he does a lot of stuff covering like the Big Ten, and he's very familiar with players like this. And so, he actually was the one who brought him up. And the way that Connor was talking about him, he was like, man, he's got all these big time throws. He's got so few turnover worthy plays. His passing grade has been through the roof. It was that Iowa game where he looked just absolutely fantastic. And I go back and I watch his tape, and I'm like, man, this kid's impressive. And if I didn't know anything about the last couple of years, I'd be like, holy cow, like this dude's absolutely a draftable quarterback, and somebody that looked like one of the more accurate quarterbacks in the country that I watched. I mean, the fundamentals were clean. The footwork was great. He was always on his toes. The follow through was great for him. It wasn't too much of a sidearm motion, which we see nowadays with some quarterbacks. And I get it. Like to each their own. It's kind of their style, how much they want to have a sidearm throwing motion, because sometimes it works. But I'm sort of a sucker for when it looks very traditional, because it can be very repeatable. There's a lot of common fundamentals that you could just continue to get to all the time. And I thought he showed really nice zip on those passes, certainly out to the sideline. The accuracy was fantastic. The true ball placement on some of those big time throws was just absolutely fantastic from him. And then you saw a good amount of that in the first half of that Minnesota game. Second half, it was a little bit of an up and down, and obviously like it was a game that they let get away from them there. But I still think that he had some big throws in that game. And so then after watching him this year, I go back and I watch him last year. And that's when I started to see like, okay, these were the cracks in the armor, if you will. He is last year, specifically more than this year, although there is some of it, which I'll get to in a second, very locked into his first read. He was just like, okay, this is where the primary read is. I am throwing this football. It doesn't really matter. And sometimes he would throw a nice football, but the guy's covered. It's either getting broken up. It's not going to be accurate. It could be turnovers at times. And that's why he ended up having a higher turnover-worthy play percentage last year than he had a big-time throw percentage, actually. So that sort of goes into it. And then I take that into this year and I go, all right, well, if I put the rose-colored glasses away from just watching some of his best plays, that's when you start to see some of those things still there. He is still a tick slow to get off of that primary read. Sometimes it is all he is looking at, and he is forcing where that football is going. I think that might have been the case in that first interception that he had in that Minnesota game, as it just felt like he was locked onto his first read and he was throwing that no matter what. It was I'll give the defender credit. I think the defender did a nice job of saying, like, okay, here at the snap, oh, I'm kind of like a hook curl zone defender. And then he just starts going to the sideline. He's like, nope, just kidding. This is cover 2. And like, so he's underneath the throw. And so the defender does do a nice job. I know that when quarterbacks do things good, the best quarterback ever, and everything's on them, and it's all to their credit and everything. And then when they do things bad, it's like, oh my gosh, it's all their fault. It's not the defender ever doing a good job. And I think the truth is always a little bit in between. But when I watched him this year, I'm very curious to see how long he keeps it up, to be honest with you. Because if he plays just like the way he has over the first part of this season, I think he's getting drafted. Like I do. I think that he has now become a day 3 type of a quarterback. But if he sort of regresses a little bit more into what last year was, then yeah, you start to talk about a quarterback that, unfortunately, when you bring up his scouting or profile, one of the first things you have to say is that he doesn't want to go through progressions. He wants to sort of, like, even some of those great throws that he has had so far this season, he has been pinpoint accurate on some of those, where he's made it look really good when it comes to the final product. But if you go back and you sort of analyze it a little bit, you go, I don't even know if you should have thrown that ball. You just threw it so perfect that it worked.
Yes on his film for sure.
There is a good amount of that, and so again, when you put down the rose-colored glasses and you see it for what it is, there is a lot more good this year than there was last year. But there is still some of those, bad reads, not getting to that second part of his progressions, and just still some of that in his game that he really has to get out if he wants to be an NFL quarterback.
Yeah, and what I saw in the Minnesota game, which was objectively his worst game of the season, was a few of those tight window throws he hit early on in the game. And I think he was maybe, he got a little too much dip on the chip with some of the decisions he made throughout, because, he had 1 turnover worthy play according to PFF in his first 4 games of the season. And he had 4 alone against Minnesota, including that interception. You talked about some of his underlying numbers looking really good this year. He's got 11 big time throws, which is 8th among qualifying quarterbacks. 11.2 ADOT, which is 15th best amongst qualifying quarterbacks, 81 first downs, which leads the FBS. He talked about if he can continue this, and talking about some of the issues he has with, locking onto his first read. It seems like he doesn't do a great job of going with full field reads. Like if you have like a flood concept, you can get to 1 to 2 really easily.
Right.
But he doesn't go from 1 to 2 to 3 from left to right or right to left. Is that something you've noticed as well? And how important is that in evaluating a quarterback going to the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely what I've noticed. And a lot of times when he gets in trouble, I will now, of course, like I'm doing this in a desk chair with the all 22, and I can go, I can rewind and pause it and slow-mo it. So, me analyzing it and being critical is a lot easier than him having to make a split-second decision. But unfortunately, that's the game of football at the highest level. And there are too many times where I will watch him just focus in on a read. And look, he's got 2 really great wide receivers to throw to, and Ian Strong and KJ Duff. And so I can understand play. And there's sort of that mix to it as well, right? Like Joe Burrow has a little bit of that with the Bengals. Now, Joe Burrow processes at such an elite level, but like sometimes you will watch Joe Burrow and he'll be like, no, I'm getting this ball to Jamar Chase. But it's a good bet because it's Jamar Chase, right? And so you could say, all right, well, he didn't really go through progressions. He locked onto his primary receiver. But when you have guys like that, sometimes like that's sort of just the way that you play offense. And I think with Duff and with Strong, there is a little bit of that with him. And then the balance is very tricky into like what you should be doing versus how you can improve. And I do think that what you mentioned about the progressions, like that is the biggest flaw of his game right now. Is I agree with you. When they are half field reads and when everything is right in front of him, he has the ability to say, okay, here's a high-low concept. I'm reading the corner. Okay, here's a sail concept. I'm reading where this safety is going to go. And he's able to sort of layer throws in that regard, sort of change where he might be going with the football. But when he does have to make those full field reads, when he does have to turn his head and turn his body completely, it's either not happening at all or it's too late. And both of them are no-nos. So both of them will get you in trouble, whether it's taking a sack or, putting the ball in harm's way if you have a late throw or something like that. But I agree with you. I mean, again, you go back back to that Minnesota game. I can't remember who was on the receiving end of that, the touchdown that was right over the middle.
That was KJ Duff.
That was KJ. Okay. That throw is nuts. Like that throw is the phrase that they use is putting the football in a football sized window. Like that, that ball was so perfect. You watch that throw and you go, if he does that multiple times, like you're talking about a guy who has insane ball control and accuracy. And to that point of the season, because remember, that was the first half of the Minnesota game. So to this point of the season, he's coming off the Iowa game. He's doing stuff like that. You go, who is this guy? You almost, when you are watching the best of him, it is like you are watching like Jared Goff at his best, or like how Joe Burrow was able to pinpoint the football. And that's when you go, man, if you keep this up, you're absolutely getting drafted, because the value of being able to put the football in such precise locations is valuable no matter who you are, especially to that degree. Then you continue to watch a little bit more. And obviously there's an unraveling in the second half of that Minnesota game. And that's why his evaluation is so tricky for me, because I'm very excited about what I saw through the first, whatever it is, third of the way through the season. But in reality, you can't really have a definitive feel on him until we get to the end of the year. Like, you have to give us a full sample size and a higher volume of what you are capable of and how consistent you are of being able to play at the highest level. So to me, Kaliakmanis is somebody that I was sort of late to the party, even like getting him on my radar from an NFL draft perspective. What I have watched so far feels like the best of DVD of what we have seen from him. And if he's able to continue this throughout the rest of the season, it's something that he'll be in draft conversations. But if he dips back to sort of more of what he was last year, that's where you wonder if he ends up getting drafted after all.
Yeah, I've heard the analogy of like high school accuracies being able to hit the door, college accuracies being able to hit the doorknob, and NFL accuracies being able to hit the keyhole. And he's had a ton of keyhole throws this year, and it's represented with those big time throws and these gaudy numbers. But if he can keep that kind of consistency up, and if he plays to the level he's played for the first 5 games as a whole through the rest of the season, where do you see his draft stock landing come end of the year?
Man, I mean, if he plays the way that he has played through like 5.5 games, like he would be, in my opinion, like he would be considered a mid-round quarterback, especially in a down quarterback class. Like that's what, because it's, I don't know how much higher I can put him than that, because, you know, people could bring up the example of like Tyler Shuck from last year at Louisville, where they go, well, hold on, like Tyler Shuck was a 1-year wonder. He was an older quarterback. He still went in the second round. And as a draft analyst, I tell you, yeah, but should he have? You know, like
I just look at his 15 best plays last year, he was the number 1 pick.
Right. And it's sort of like this sort of like there's always a bigger picture to that being the case. And Kaliakmanis is one of those players who you go, if you take his 15 best throws, he's probably the best quarterback that we've seen in college football this year. But that's why his evaluation is so tough. And when it gets under the microscope a little bit more, even if he continues this pace that he's on here, I think he'd be, you know, like a late day 2 type of a pick. Maybe with a down quarterback class, they talked themselves into him being a little bit higher than that. But it's also hard for, even if this past year, the last year is your best year, you still have everything else that happened in your college career. And it's harder for me to, I like to buy into guys. The older they get, the better they get, the more wise they get, and just the more talented they are. Because we do forget that, like, I mean, these are, you know, late teens, early 20s dudes. You know, like they're getting stronger. They're evolving as the game goes on, and so people are allowed to get better. Is kind of what I'm saying. You shouldn't necessarily weigh who he was 2 years ago more than what you weigh with him this year. There's always sort of a formula that you have there. But I would tell you that if he has a year, if he continues to have the year like he has had so far, I would think that he's somewhere around a mid-round pick, 3rd, 4th round, something like that.
That'd be amazing, because Rutgers hasn't had a quarterback drafted since, I want to say, 2009 with Mike Teal in the 6th round. So he would certainly, if he keeps it up, be the highest drafted quarterback in a very long time for the Scarlet Knights. But I do have a few other guys that we wanted to discuss before we let you go. You mentioned his number one receiver, Ian Strong, 81.7 grade, the 22nd best qualifying FBS receiver this year. He leads the FBS in contested catches. He's one of the best receivers against zone. What have you noticed about Ian Strong that really makes him, appetizing to NFL evaluators?
Yeah, I mean, he is built like an NFL player. I think that you could just turn on the tape and before the ball is even snapped, you go, yep, that guy could play in the league, just like by looking at him and how big he is and just the physical profile that he brings. And then he, of course, like plays a style that there are very few wide receivers, draft eligible or not, that can play above the rim and have the contested catch ability that he has, how strong his hands are. He reminds me in ways of what Dwayne Bowe was like for the Kansas City Chiefs,
Ooh.
where you look at a player who ended up going in the second round. And I think that when you watch Dwayne Bowe, like Bowe was pretty limited in who he was as a route runner, what you could ask him to do, when it came to separation. But when it came to throwing the ball up there, whether it was over the middle of the field, the sideline, or the end zone, like this dude was money. And there are times when what Ian Strong is able to bring to the table reminds me of sort of the way that Dwayne Bowe played at the NFL level as a really talented player. And so Strong is somebody who I think he's got really nice straight line speed for who he is as a possession, big bodied, strong above the rim type of a wide receiver. If he's running a vertical route on you and you're not, accounting for how long his strides are and how athletic he is, he can create a little bit of vertical separation on you, but he's not really going to be a separation guy in and out of the breaks. It's tougher for him to sink his hips. It's tougher for him to quickly, get to the sideline for an out route or something like that. Like he kind of is what it is. It's a vertical, it's a post, and it's an in-breaking route type of a player. And of course, like comebacks and curls and things like that. But he is one of those guys where you talk about Trump, like I'll talk about Trump cards for players. And not everybody has this. This is a category that I have on my scouting sheet, my scouting profile for these guys that is often not filled out, to be honest with you, because a Trump card truly has to be something that is difference making. But as of right now, I mean, I would lean toward giving him, it's sort of like the Madden X Factor thing. Like I would give him that hands, that contested catch ability because I think it is so repeatable. It's really tough to make a living in the NFL being a contested catch wide receiver. But Ian Strong at least has the frame. He's got the muscular build. He's got the long arms. He extends his arms to fully catch the ball and attack it in the air. And he's just got the production as that contested catch receiver to make me feel like this guy can be a top 75 type of pick, even if he's not super diverse as a route runner because of how dominant this guy is at the catch point.
Yeah, that's something I wanted to ask about him. Given that he does win so many of these these slants where the corner's draped all over him, and it's kind of like a street fight to win the ball. Those are a lot tougher in the NFL where corners are stronger, they're faster, they're longer. Do those kind of guys, in terms of evaluations, kind of give you pause, or is it something if he's good enough to continually, repeatedly do it in college at the Big Ten level, he's probably going to be able to do it in the NFL?
No, absolutely. And people love to ask us all the time, like, hey, what are some scouting lessons that you have had like throughout the years? Because I've been doing this a while. I was doing it on my own for a really long time. I did it at the Draft Network before. Now I'm at Pro Football Focus. And so I've been doing it for a while. And one of my biggest learning lessons has come from being more wary of guys who are just contested catch players. I remember in the 2019 class, I believe this was. They had JJ Arcega-Whiteside in that class. I was going to
mention him as an Eagles fan. That was a rough learning lesson for me too.
And Kelvin Harmon from NC State. Those were two guys in that class who I absolutely loved because I planted my flag and it was just pounding the table for give me the alphas at the catch point. And it's just so hard to be that kind of a player at the NFL level. It's so hard if you are not something else. And Strong, I go, okay, at least I do think he can be a little bit of a vertical guy. Like if you give him the green light to say, hey, go run a go route here, go run a vertical route, he can cover some ground. Like he's got a decent straight line speed, and you could take that into how he runs post routes as well. So there's a little bit more diversification than there was for guys like Kelvin Harmon and guys like JJ Arcega-Whiteside. And the way that I kind of come to it now is like, if you are a contested catch guy, I better think that it is a trump card for you, because and to be a trump card contested catch player, you have to have the overall size, you have to be tall, you have to have long arms, you have to have the body density, you have to have clearly like a muscled up frame to be able to go to war every time the ball is in the air. And I think Ian Strong has a lot of those things. And so as we watch Kaliakmanis for the rest of the year, I'm going to continue to watch Ian Strong as well, because there are times when I think that this guy could really be a go-to red zone player at the NFL level.
In terms of draft grade, where would you kind of slot him in right now? He's a draft eligible junior, so he could still come back for another year. But based on what you've seen, where do you think he slots in?
Yeah, I think that he's a top 75 player right now, which I think would say somewhere between late second, early third round. Again, it's sort of tough for me to give guys of his style a higher grade than that. He'd really just have to continue to put on a show and just have a full body of work this season for me to go a little bit higher than that. But I would say that he's somewhere in the mid day 2 range right now with a late second, early third.
Let's talk about his running mate, KJ Duff, who, fun fact, was Ian Strong's high school teammate. So these guys were in the same receiver room at St. Anthony's on Long Island. So shout out to St. Anthony's. He is not eligible for this draft, but he has certainly made some noise in the Big Ten. What have you seen in KJ Duff, and kind of what is your early take on his draft outlook?
Yeah, I mean, like you talk about having, again, like going back to Kaliakmanis, like a an embarrassment of giant wide receivers to be able to throw the ball to who are really talented. I mean, I genuinely think that these are two NFL guys that he is throwing the ball to. And Duff, I think, has a little bit more wiggle to him than Strong does. I think he's a little bit more flexible. Yep. I think he's a little bit better of a route runner. They will position Duff in the slot as like that power slot. Shout out Nate Tice for the term there. But they will they will put him in those positions where they feel good enough about how he moves as a guy who is 6'6" to be able to give him that green light two-way goes and give him a little bit of extra space to, okay, if he's aligned in the slot, we can certainly have him go over the middle, but we can also have him put his foot in the ground, give him a little bit of an extra runway to create that separation for an out route towards the sideline, things like that. So another guy with really good hands. You mentioned he's not draft eligible, so I haven't done like a full scouting profile on him yet. But as I'm watching Kaliakmanis and Ian Strong, he obviously is someone who continues to pop as well. So excited to continue to watch him. And that's sort of my preliminary thoughts with him, who definitely feels like a future NFL guy.
Two more quick guys for you. Eric O'Neill's the pass rusher. He came in as a transfer from James Madison, had 3 outstanding years in terms of PFF grades before arriving at Rutgers, 88.2 in 22 as a redshirt freshman at Long Island University, 82.0 in 23, and 90.2 in 24 for James Madison. He's a little bit undersized. What's your kind of evaluation on him? He's in his final year of eligibility.
Yeah, I think he's a really good football player. Like, this is somebody who I think absolutely should get drafted. You know, I think it'll probably be either mid to late day 3 just because of the lack of size on him. But you love the hand usage. You love the effort that he plays with. He's always working to stay clean. That was the case in his tape last year. I'm excited that he's at Rutgers this year because I think the grades are solid from him this year. Are they as good as they were last year? No, but you've got to remember this too. The way that PFF grades work is if you are good for longer, that means more. Volume and sample size means a lot towards PFF because the bigger of the sample size you have, the more stable I think your performance is. And so, for example, like I don't know the exact formula, but I'm just using this as an example here. If you have Eric O'Neill, who as a pass rusher, maybe he has a grade of 73.9 and then a 74.8 and then like a 77.1 and then a 72.2, like his pass rush grade, a cumulative pass rush grade in the formula for 4 grades that would be in the 70s would probably be low 80s. And people always go like, whoa, hold on. Is it like an average? And no, it's not always an average. Sometimes it is. If you are consistently good at what you do, that means more. That normally stands out, helps you stand out because it shows that you are more effective, that you are more consistent at what you're doing, which is part of the formula that kind of like gives you the better grade. So I think that it's just something to keep in mind when you look at these PFF grades. Sometimes you'll get a guy who, like, as a pass rusher, his pass rush grade on the season might be an 85.0. And then you go and you look at all of his games as a pass rusher and you go, well, hold on, wait a second. He only had 2 games where he was graded above an 85.0. So like how does that factor in? Well, if he doesn't have a ton of stinker games, if his floor is really high, and if he's really consistent at what he does, then that weighs into the formula. And as a larger sample size, it tells you what kind of player he is and how, effective he is at getting the job done. So O'Neal was one of those guys where his numbers might be okay right now, but we might get to the end of the season and they might look pretty dang good if he continues to just play at a really high level. So really good football player. I think he's got good eyes. Love his flexibility, how he can get low in that 3-point and 4-point stance. The lack of physical size, I think, will just be always something that's going to play against him. It's why I think he'll probably be a mid-day 3 guy at best. But I'd have a hard time thinking that this guy doesn't get drafted because of this constant success he has had at a myriad of spots, how he has continued to go up in competition and continue to play well. And it just seems like he's a dang good football player. So I would say that he's got a draftable grade right now.
Love to hear that. One guy I want to put on your radar, he's also not draft eligible. He's kind of taken the mantle of the starting running back role. And that role, while Rutgers hasn't always had a lot of success on the field, they've had a steady churn of running backs dating back to Ray Rice. You have Gus Edwards, Isaiah Pacheco, and now you have Kyle Monungai, who I know you guys hyped up a lot last year in the draft process. I think my big prediction is I think by the end of the year, he'll be the starting running back with the Bears, but that's a story for another day. But Antwan Raymond, 87.2 overall grade, fifth amongst FBS running backs. He's third in first downs, fourth in missed tackles forced, sixth in yards after contact. He's got 14 touchdowns in his last 7 games. I think he's a guy that you'll be hearing a lot more from later in the season, and I think he'll be a draft-eligible guy next year. So I just wanted to put him on your radar.
Man, I appreciate that. I spend so much time on the guys that are draft eligible, even some of the best in college football who are underclassmen. I don't know and I haven't heard of, but numbers like that, I mean, you're balling. And man, what an offense Rutgers has right now with the way that Kaliakmanis is playing, those 2 wide receivers, the running back room. I mean, it's Rutgers has got a legit offense, it feels like, this season. And I hope it can continue because it's a lot of fun to watch with all that talent there.
Yeah, it feels like we're living in the upside down world from Stranger Things, where like normally we have a good defense and good special teams, struggling offense, and it's been the total opposite this year. But Trey, I know you got to head out. We really appreciate your time. Tell our Rutgers fans where we can find your work and where we can find you on social media.
Sure. Yeah. NFL Stock Exchange, that podcast and that YouTube channel, myself and Connor Rogers, we're covering at 365. It is a all year round draft channel. Of course, everything over at PFF as well. Rutgers fans, obviously, like into college football, check out the college football channel. I'm not in on that one, but Max and Dalton do a fantastic job covering college football in a very in-depth way. But yeah, Mike, appreciate you having me on. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, and really appreciate you having on. Maybe we'll have you on another time as well to kind of, as we're getting closer to the draft, to see where things shook out. But thanks for listening. This has been another edition of the Night Report podcast, signing off.